episode, we're going to talk about what separates the top 100 podcasts from the thousands and thousands and thousands of other active podcasts that get overlooked. And together, we're going to work through a simple exercise that you can do this week to help you lay the groundwork for a podcast that people actually want to binge. Welcome to Insider Secrets to a Top 100 podcast. I'm your host, Courtney Elmer. Let's make your business binge-worthy. The secret to a top 100 podcast is not being the host who delivers the most insightful episodes, or who releases the most episodes every week, or even the host who stays in the podcasting game for the longest amount of time. The secret to a top 100 podcast is knowing how to get inside the mind of your ideal listener and solving the very real problems that they have. So we're going to lay the groundwork with a really quick exercise just to help you learn to begin to speak the language of your ideal listener. There's this common misconception in the industry that starting a podcast is easy. And I get it. It does look as easy as buying a high quality mic and figuring out where to plug it in and finding time on your calendar to produce good content and then releasing that consistently. And most people do that and they think, all right, I'm good to go. I've got it dialed in. I'm going to do this podcast and it's going to be the thing that grows my audience, that grows my awareness, and that grows my business. And the reality is they go out and they fail. 8 out of 10 new podcast hosts never make it past episode 6. For the lucky 2 out of 10 that make it to their first year, their average downloads are less than 2,000 downloads for the entire year. They've got no clients from it. They're showing up week after week, spending so much time and energy and effort to creating this high value resource for their community. And then they look at their analytics dashboard and they've got 20 downloads an episode, 30 downloads an episode. And they think to themselves, for all the time and energy that this takes, this isn't worth my time. I'm not getting the results that I hope to get. And they throw in the towel. Most of our clients who learn the pod launch methodology and who follow it without deviation go on to 3x, 4x, 5x, or even 50x those total downloads in their first year. And that's why you're here, because you want these results and we want to help you get them. But it is going to require you to think differently about your ideal client, or in this case, your ideal listener, than maybe you've thought about them in the past. Because being successful with the podcast is not about putting out the highest quality content or staying in the game the longest. The key to being successful with your show is simply knowing what levers to pull to make sure that it can get the attention it deserves. And most importantly, for you, especially if you're a business owner, that it can convert your listeners to clients on repeat. The problem is most people don't even know what these levers are. Many of them don't even know that they exist. And it kind of boggles my mind that this is not common knowledge by now. So I'm making it my mission to change that. Because once I figured this out, we were able to take our podcast from 0 downloads to thousands of downloads a month in less than 2 years. And in doing so, it helped us increase our email open rates from a terrible, embarrassingly low 10% to up to 60 to 98% to our general list. And it helped our community become more engaged than ever. We did the math one day and we found out that the podcast was growing 4,038% faster than our social media accounts. And yes, that is a real number. We were floored when we realized that. And we've been able to monetize the podcast over the past 4+ years by enrolling clients into our programs without running ads. And we've helped hundreds of people do the same. And if it's worked for them, it's going to work for you too. So here's what we're going to do right now. I want you to get out a blank sheet of paper and I want you to draw 2 vertical lines down the middle of your paper. So you're going to wind up with 3 sections. And what we're going to do first is we're going to turn our attention to that far right side of the paper. And I want you to think about who your show is for, your ideal listener. But more than that, I want you to think about, what are you here to help them do or achieve? What do they want most? What are they striving for in their life right now that you can help them attain? Set a timer for 5 minutes and just brain dump and write that down on that far right side of your paper. Okay, so now we're going to turn our attention to the far left side of your paper. And in looking at what you just wrote on the right-hand side, now I want you to write the opposite of that on the left side. Most likely, it's the thing that they're experiencing right now that's uncomfortable, that they don't like, that they don't want, that they're frustrated with, maybe feeling overwhelmed or anxious about. And the purpose of this exercise is to start to clue you into the problems that your podcast is here to solve. And you're going to see why this is so important when we get to phase 1 and why this is so critical to the success of your podcast. So let's say, for example, using my podcast as an example, that on the right-hand side, you wrote down that they want a top 100 podcast with thousands of downloads every single week. But the opposite of that is that right now, maybe they have a podcast that's stagnant. It's getting less than 1,000 downloads per episode. It's not growing like they expected it to. It's not getting new listeners every week. Those listeners are not converting to leads for their programs. They're not becoming clients. And these are all the problems they're experiencing as a result of not having the thing that they want. Okay, so pause this, set your timer again for 5 minutes, and brain dump all the problems that they're experiencing right now as a result of not having the results that they want. All right, and last but not least, we're going to look at that middle column now. And I want you to notice, how does having all of these problems that you've listed there on the left-hand side make them feel? I want you to identify what your audience is feeling and go ahead and brain dump that in the middle column. If they don't have a top 100 podcast, and yet there they are every week showing up, releasing an episode, releasing their best content, spending an hour a week or more to create that content and share it with their audience, but yet they're not in the top 100 yet. They're not ranking on the charts every week. They're only getting 20 downloads an episode. How does that make them feel? And I want you to do that line by line for each of these problems that you've started to identify and write down, how does it make them feel? Go ahead and pause this, set your timer for another 5 minutes, and then come back when you're finished. Okay, so now that you've done this work, I want you to start to notice a few very important things. First and foremost is that the feelings that your ideal listener is experiencing right now is a result of a problem that they have. A lot of times what happens is people will come into Pod Launch and they'll say, okay, I'm here to solve all these problems. And their problems are a list of feelings. Are you feeling overwhelmed in the day-to-day of running your business? The problem with this, though, is that overwhelm is subjective. The overwhelm that a brand new business owner feels is totally different than the overwhelm that a 7-figure business owner feels. So part of this exercise is to help you begin to see the feelings are separate from the problems, or said a different way, the feelings are a result of the problem. It's a simple cause and effect. So that's one thing we want to notice. The other thing we want to notice is that the problems and the results are two different things. And yes, that seems totally obvious, I know. However, it's very important for you to understand this. The other thing I want you to notice is that the problems and the results that your ideal listener wants are two completely different ends of a spectrum. A lot of times hosts make the mistake of speaking to the transformation that they provide and not addressing the problem that they're here to help their listeners solve. It's the difference for me between saying, I have a podcast that's designed to help you understand the psychology of your ideal listener so that you can increase your downloads, versus saying, I have a podcast called Insider Secrets to a Top 100 Podcast, where I'm going to show you exactly what you need to do to rank every week, to grow your podcast consistently, and to convert your listeners to leads for your business. Very different way of communicating. And last but not least, I will leave you with this. Solving problems is how you are going to be able to deliver the most value to your listener as a podcast host. I know this is not what we're taught. In the industry, we are taught, teach how-to content, give your best stuff away for free, talk to people about the results that you can help them get. But the best podcasts solve problems for people. This is why they're bingeable. And yes, even if you have a true crime podcast or a travel podcast or another type of entertainment-focused podcast, those still solve problems. Very real problems. In fact, it's the same reason why you or I watch Netflix at night when we want to relax, or why we reach for our phone in the middle of our workday because we need a distraction. All right, you've got your marching orders. If you didn't already finish the exercise, go ahead and take the time to do that now. Now, in the next episode, we're going to be talking about the predictions for this year in podcasting, and specifically how podcasting is changing the way that we do business. I've got Josh Elledge joining me for that episode, who himself has a top podcast with over 1,600 episodes, and who has also helped hundreds of clients build profitable sales funnels with their podcast as the cornerstone. There are some changes that are coming to the industry that you need to be aware of. So head on over with us to the next episode so we can help you make your business binge-worthy.